Hello and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Kidnapped Hearts, the weekly TV show brought to you by the International Criminal Court against Child Kidnapping. We are committed to bringing you the ugly truth about the corrupted family court systems and heinous crimes against children, which the government continues to turn a blind eye to. Today, we have an episode that you need to pay attention to, especially if you're a parent in Great Britain or know of anyone who is. In our last episode, Dark Secrets, Medical Kidnapping in the United Kingdom, we touched on medical kidnapping and the financial profit that is made by removing children from their parents' care. If you've not already seen that episode, then we strongly recommend that you do. This week, we'll be following on in that vein in our examination of the British care system. But before we go any further, as a disclaimer, we must stress that this episode is not about breaking the law or doing anything illegal. And even though not all officials are crooked, that doesn't mean that you should let your guard down. Nor are we lambasting the foster parents who open their homes to these children, as a lot of them are good people. Furthermore, whatever we say here should also not be viewed as legal advice. If in doubt, it's always recommended to speak to your lawyer. And if you do need legal help, you are welcome to contact our office, where we can give you further advice. The United Kingdom is the only country in Europe which enforces what is called forced adoption. As its name suggests, it is a removal of children from their home without, or oftentimes against their family's wishes. The government of the United Kingdom states that children are only removed and adopted out without parental consent when it is in the child's best interest to do so, and when nothing else will do. There is a legal process that must be followed, and the decision ultimately rests with a judge who must decide the evidence against the parent on the balance of probabilities. Section 31 of the Children Act 1989 requires that children only be removed from their parents if they have suffered or are at risk of suffering significant harm. Critics have objected that the term risk of significant harm is undefined, giving social workers too much leeway to remove children. Julie Haynes of the pressure group Justice for Families stated in 2012 that Parliament has given the courts free rein to define the term significant harm within case law authorities and has not deemed it necessary to provide a definitive meaning within the Children Act 1989. There is no checklist of harm, no clues as to what the courts could be looking for. In a nutshell, what this means is the British government will take a child away from their parents if they feel that the parents might do something harmful to the child in the future. That's right. The British government seems to have taken up roles as psychics who can make predictions about bad things that might happen to any British child at any given moment. And believe it or not, this is one of the more common reasons given to British parents who have unfairly and unjustly lost their child to the foster system with no actual evidence of abuse. So basically, children are being removed from loving homes and families for something that has not even happened, or may not even happen. Does that sound preposterous to you? Well, it should, because it is a corrupted, ice-cold and brutal child-snatching system that is tearing families apart for money and substantial profits. When these children are forcefully removed from their homes, the families often have no control over the situation or even their children's whereabouts. They don't know where their children may be going, what sort of people they'll be given to, or even if they'll have any hope of ever being reunited with their children. It is shocking that forced adoption is even still legal in the UK when it is not in the rest of Europe. Even worse, children are sometimes removed forcefully by the police in a way that leaves them frightened and traumatised. There are many stories of women who have had their babies snatched from them as soon as they've given birth. These helpless women never even get the opportunity to hug or breastfeed their babies before their child is stolen from them. The argument is often that the woman may be unable to cope with raising a child, or perhaps she's been labelled as having mental issues because she may have had anxiety or depression in the past. And as unreasonable as it is, women have even lost their children because they suffered from postnatal depression after the birth. Often, these women do not have the funds to fight this corrupt system. A lot of them plunge into that despair of losing a child, and in worse cases, Some have even been known to take their own lives. Channel 4, a British TV station, did an investigation which revealed a secret underground network that started to help these desperate parents flee from social services in the UK. We must stress that we do not condone any activity that may be seen as illegal, but we are simply drawing reference to this situation to highlight how desperate and tragic these cases have become, where parents are forced to consider such extreme measures. Channel 4 spoke to one such couple who ran the risk of having their baby removed after the pregnant mother gave birth. The charge levelled against the parents we spoke to was not physical or sexual abuse, but emotional abuse or the risk of future emotional neglect or abuse. They say it is a charge that they cannot defend themselves against. We met one British couple, Julie and Andy, not their real names, hiding out in a southern European country. The network helped them flee from the UK earlier this year when they discovered she was pregnant. They are now a couple in hiding. Like many parents we met, their argument was that they were not given a fair hearing by a system that was too quick to remove children. Their child was removed at birth because the mother, who suffered prenatal depression during her pregnancy, and the father were assessed as posing a risk of future emotional neglect. According to the couple, the local authority just pressed the nuclear button. Talking about their daughter being placed in care, they told Channel 4 News, "We hadn't hurt her. We were punished for something that we hadn't done." While they accept the need for action in some cases, they insist that parents can be accused of something that is impossible to defend themselves against. "We recognise that the child protection system is important, but you can be convicted of the potentiality of causing harm or neglect." They are now in hiding. Once you've lost one, you have no chance at all. After our experiences of our first child, we have absolutely no confidence at all in the system. As horrific as it may sound, the reality is that an underground network like this would not be able to exist if there was not a need for it by desperate parents who do not get a fair trial, or are too scared of a government that continues to fail them when they've done nothing wrong. Channel 4 went on to describe this elaborate system that had been born when there were little other options available to these parents. The scale and sophistication of the networks is extraordinary. We were told of safe houses across the UK where parents and their children could lie low before heading overseas, of fake birth certificates and of keys for rented homes in foreign countries that are exchanged in the middle of the night by strangers connected only by the networks. As to the numbers involved, it is impossible to verify. But we were told by one woman central to several groups that help parents get out of the country that there has been anything from 300 to 600 families in the past year that have left the UK from the involvement of social care. The most popular destination is the Republic of Ireland, but the networks extend across Europe, Mediterranean countries being the other main destinations for families on the run. Channel 4 News discovered an unlikely figure in an unlikely location who is a central character in these networks. He has taken it upon himself to assist in the flight of many of these families. Sitting in Monaco, Ian Josephs, an 80-year-old British businessman, puts it bluntly. "It's war," he says, "between parents who've had their children taken and the social workers who've taken them." Having first come across what he sees as family courts injustice some 30 years ago, he now helps hundreds of families each year as they fight the system to keep their children. "I get 2 or 3 new calls every single day practically," he says. "That doesn't sound too many, but if you multiply it by 365, it comes to quite a lot. But it is more than advice. I'm no Bill Gates, but I do pay for pregnant women to escape the country." He is motivated by an unshakable belief that the system and the family courts have the wrong approach, and that other countries will treat parents fighting charges of emotional neglect in an entirely different manner. "If you saw the women that I have seen whose babies have been snatched from them by truly heartless social workers who've shown no compassion, no sorrow, no pity, no words of consolation, you would think that somebody should do something about it," he says. Why is it happening so much in England and not in France, for example, where I live, or Monaco, where I live, and not in Spain, and not in Italy? It's a very British phenomena. In fact, it was further revealed that flawed expert testimony from paediatricians and psychiatrists is having a profound and disturbing effect on some family cases as they move through the system, as its most extreme, ending with children being wrongfully removed from their parents. Last month we reported on starkly new research which raised a number of serious issues about the quality of evidence given by psychologists in family courts. Among the findings was the fact that some 20% of psychologists were not deemed qualified, and that some 65% of expert reports were judged to be poor or very poor quality. There is no doubt that the British government knows about these injustices, yet still they do nothing to remedy a system that seemingly punishes children and their innocent parents. And what is even more horrific is that it is often the poorer classes who get targeted, those with not enough funds to fight a crooked system. How often do you hear about the upper classes having their children wrongfully removed from their care and put into foster care? We're not saying that it doesn't happen, but certainly those cases are fewer. Let's take for instance a case where a 3-year-old British girl went missing whilst on holiday. Madeleine McCann was on vacation with her parents, both of whom were doctors, and her 2 younger twin siblings. Her parents left Madeleine and their other children unattended and with no adult supervision in a hotel room while they went out to dinner with their friends. Madeleine went missing soon after and has never been seen again. Since Madeleine disappeared almost 11 years ago, more than £11 million has been spent so far on the probe to find the missing girl. Consider this: if the McCanns were poor or of a lower class, would the government have still kept investing such large sums to find Madeleine? And if the McCanns were poor or of lower class, would they have still been allowed to keep their other children with no meddling from social services? Which incidentally is what happened, as none of their other children were removed, nor were they ever questioning about their parenting skills. Or would they perhaps have been charged with neglect for leaving 3 children under the age of 3 to go out with their friends? And as a result, would they have had their other remaining children removed? Sadly, the facts are that those involved in the social services often fall short of doing their job properly. In an article, the Times newspaper reported, "The social workers, medical experts and judges who decide to remove children sometimes save lives by doing so. Sometimes they ruin them. That is a grave responsibility. It means that the child protection system should be accountable and transparent. Shockingly, it is neither. Serious miscarriages of justice are occurring behind the closed doors of social services departments and family courts. The area of child protection is described as a hole inside government, with ministers unable even to say who is responsible. Too often, a secret state is at work that seems to assume that parents are guilty and then obstructs them from establishing their innocence. Some parents are unable to get copies of the evidence against them, including x-rays. Others are refused permission to call experts in their defence. Many fear that the professionals are distorting evidence and amplifying problems which should be solved by supporting families rather than by tearing them apart. It is impossible to know the extent to which miscarriages of justice may be occurring because the whole system is shrouded in secrecy. Gagging orders on families and draconian reporting restrictions mean that very few cases come to light. Judges can choose to make their judgments public, but few do. The authorities justify secrecy by arguing that the suffering of children caught in these fraught situations should not be made even worse by publicity. But secrecy also protects incompetence and wrongdoing. It should be quite possible to maintain the anonymity of children while also holding the professionals to account. Rape victims are anonymous in rape cases. That does not prevent police officers making statements in open court, nor the media reporting the evidence in full. Family courts have a lower standard of proof than criminal courts, yet they pass effective life sentences. If parents prove their innocence on appeal but their child has been adopted, they will never get that child back. Why is all of this happening, you may be asking? If we've learned about anything in this whole shady business of the fostering system, it is this: follow the trail of cash and you will soon find your answer. The fostering and adoption service is a big money business in the United Kingdom. Money from the British taxpayers fund this corrupt system, and some foster carers have been known to be paid over £100,000 a year, which is over 135,000 US dollars. Investment bankers view the fostering system as a high private equity, with a propensity for exponential growth. In fact, one company called CareTech, which runs children's and mental health homes, became the first stock market listed company to enter the sector in 2010, with the purchase of 4 fostering groups for £14 million. Unit Costs of Health and Social Care 2016 is a report by Curtis and Burns, which stated that in 2015-16, the total expenditure on adoption services was £339,527,628.20. And while all of this is happening, innocent parents who have not done anything wrong are being treated like everyday criminals after having their children viciously and callously taken away from them. Some have even been put into mental institutions or arrested when they tried to fight the system. There have even been cases of parents who themselves were raised in the foster system and as such, ironically, had their children removed from them because they were seen as potential threats since they would have had a difficult upbringing. If that is not the epitome of irony, then what is? Instead, the government is continuing to bully those who haven't had the voices or means to fend for themselves. And across the UK, families and lives are being torn apart with no saviour in sight. I encourage you to share this video with your friends and family. This is something that can affect parents and children everywhere, and we need to join in standing up against these injustices and to raise awareness. That's all we have time for today on our show. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Kidnapped Hearts. Tell us what you think on our Facebook page at facebook.com/childabductioncourt.org or on our Twitter page at childabductionc. You can also drop us a line at our website, childabductioncourt.eu, or in the comments section below this video. Be sure to tune in next week for another hard-hitting episode with nothing but the facts.